All right, today we're jumping into a really intense moment from the biblical book of Numbers. We're going to look at a single story where an entire nation is standing right on the edge of a promise, and one single decision, a decision fueled by pure fear, is about to change everything for an entire generation.
And that really brings us to the core question here. What happens when a promise is refused? I mean, just imagine you've been offered everything you've ever wanted. You're at the finish line of this long, hard journey. And it's the very last second, you just say no. Why would anyone do that? And what in the world happens next?
So here's the setup. 12 spies have just come back from checking out the Promised Land. But instead of the good news everyone's expecting, their report just lights a fuse. See, 10 of the spies couldn't get past one terrifying detail. There were giants in the land. And next to them, they said they felt like grasshoppers. And we're not talking about a little disappointment here. This was a complete society-wide meltdown. The text says the whole congregation just wept all night long. They were absolutely convinced this whole thing was a trap, that they'd been let out into the middle of nowhere just so they and their families could be wiped out.
And you know what happens when that much fear gets concentrated in one place, right? It turns to anger. That despair, it just curdles. And the people immediately turn on their leaders, Moses and Aaron, blaming them for everything. Their fear had just exploded into a full-on mutiny.
And this is the decision they come to. It's just so shocking when you read it. It's a complete rejection of their freedom. They literally decide to pick a new leader and march themselves right back to slavery in Egypt rather than face the scary future ahead. They chose a horror they knew over an unknown they feared.
But, not everyone was swept up in this tidal wave of panic. Two of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, they stand up and give a totally different report. They saw the exact same giants, the same big cities, but their takeaway was radically different.
I mean, look at the contrast. It is so stark. On one side, you've got this death wish, just total despair. On the other, you have this passionate plea for courage. Joshua and Caleb, they don't deny the giants are there. They just reframe the whole situation. They say the giants are bred for us, meaning they're conquerable. They argue that the real question isn't how big the enemy is, but whether God is on their side. And for saying this, the crowd gets ready to stone them to death.
So things are at a boiling point. And then, suddenly, the glory of the Lord appears. God has had it. He tells Moses, that's it. I'm wiping them all out, and I'll start a new, better nation from you. But Moses, he steps in, and he doesn't defend what the people did. Instead, he appeals to God's own character. He basically argues that if God destroys them now, all the other nations will say it's because he wasn't powerful enough to finish the job. He asks for a pardon based entirely on God's reputation for being merciful. And Moses' plea works. Kind of. God agrees to pardon them. They won't be immediately wiped out as a nation. But that pardon comes with a very heavy and very absolute consequence. Their choice to say no to the promise, well, it has a price.
And here's the verdict. It is brutal, and it is final. Not a single person from that rebellious generation, anyone 20 years old or older, will ever set foot in the Promised Land. The future they were offered, the future they rejected, that door is now slammed shut, permanently.
And this is the number that will define their fate. 40. 40 years. An entire generation is now condemned to wander in the wilderness until they pass away, never reaching the destination.
There's a really painful symbolism baked into this punishment. Those 40 days the spies spent faithlessly searching the land, the 40 days that led to their fearful report, are now scaled up into 40 years of consequence, a year for every single day of their failure.
So the verdict really had three parts. First, every adult who rebelled dies in the wilderness. Simple as that. Second, and get this, in a crazy twist of irony, the very children they were so afraid would become prey, they're the ones who will inherit the promise. And third, the wandering won't stop until every last member of that rebellious generation is gone. The consequence was just as total as the rebellion had been.
You'd think the story ends there, right? But no, it takes one last, gut-wrenching turn. As soon as the people hear the verdict, their whole attitude flips. They realize what a massive mistake they've made, and they decide they're going to fix it themselves.
So they grieve, and then they wake up the next morning and say, okay, we messed up, our bad, we're ready now, let's go take the land. But here's the thing. What would have been an act of faith yesterday is now just an act of presumption. The moment has passed. The timing is all wrong.
And Moses is crystal clear with them. He gives them a direct, explicit warning. He basically says, stop, do not go. The divine presence that would have guaranteed your victory before, it's not with you on this. If you go now, you are going alone. But they just don't listen. The text says they presumed to go up. They've mistaken their own regret and their own determination for the kind of faith they were missing just a day earlier, and so they march up that hill directly against the command they were just given. And the result is exactly what Moses warned them about, a total disaster. The symbols of God's presence, the Ark of the Covenant, and Moses himself, they stay behind in the camp. The people go up all by themselves, and they are completely crushed. Think about it. Their first rebellion was refusing to go. Their second rebellion was insisting on going. Both were disobedience, and both ended in death.
And that's what this whole story leaves us chewing on, isn't it? The people were judged for their lack of faith, and then they were defeated for an act that looked like faith but was actually just defiance. It really forces you to ask, what is the line between courageously trusting a promise and just stubbornly doing what you want? It's a fine and sometimes very dangerous line to walk.